Hey guys, and welcome back to another Toontown Mysteries Your Ideas video. Before I get into things, as always, be sure to leave a comment with your ideas, questions, thoughts, and theories on things you'd like for me to cover and discuss, and we as a group can try to get to the bottom of things together. The more you comment, the longer this series will go on. So, of course, let's get to the questions. Is the promotion theory promoted in Corporate Clash? Also, is Corporate Clash going to have a map expansion or something of the like? I think it's fair to say that the promotion theory is the standard in Corporate Clash, but it hasn't necessarily been expressly explored, so it could always change. And who knows what the future may lie in regards to the map. How did board bots come to be? In TTR there's 4 main types of cogs, but in Corporate Clash there are board bots. What's the story behind them? Well, first, it's best to establish that Corporate Clash's storyline is all to its own. This means not even Toontown Online's storyline is connected. Board bots are the top of the line branch for the Cogs Incorporated. Think Board of Executives. Cogs Incorporated has a number of branches from sales, treasury, law, management, and board bots or executives, who are the overseeing executives. One of the main arguments against board bots is that they're the same as boss bots, which is not necessarily true in my opinion. You can look at any major organization and you'll find that it has many branches within the organization. Those branches have their own management, bosses, and then for the entire company it has a board of executives or a group overseeing the entire thing led by a chairman. Where do the gags and the gag shops come from? Gag trees? If so, why are they not organic? I like the idea that the gags actually come from the shopkeepers around Toontown. So for example, seltzer bottles may very well be provided by Sid Seltzer at his shop Seltzer Bottles and Cans on Loopy Lane. That being said, there are a number of trading cards that display conveyor belt production of gags all across the board at Goofy's Gag Shop, leading us to believe that Goofy's Gag Shop actually produces each and every gag themselves and keeps themselves very busy doing so. How do the Disney characters tie in with the game's lore? Well, Toontown is the place where Mickey, Minnie, and all of the other Disney characters live, as well as Mickey being the official mayor of Toontown. I imagine each main character is a part of the Toon Council, as well as they introduce the new Toons moving into Toontown to Tutorial Tom, helping them ease their way in. They weren't heavily involved storyline-wise, but they were definitely there to provide some backup lore in certain situations. Why are the weakest Cogs in Toontown Central? You'd think the Cogs would try to send their strongest troops to the capital city if they're truly trying to take over. My only thinking that would make sense to counter your argument is perhaps it's less costly to produce a lot of these smaller cogs, so maybe the main reason that smaller cogs make it so far inland to the heart and capital city of Toontown is because there's just so many more of them. Not to mention the obvious starting playground mechanics involved with that outside of the lore. Here's a question: if Disney got Oswald back when Toontown was in development, do you think they would have included him in Funny Farms? Oswald was actually thought about being used in the Funny Farm playground at the conceptual stage. They had also thought about using Pete in certain areas as well, but the playgrounds were just deemed unnecessary or too weird to work or just didn't fit in with the funding. Why do Cog buildings change back into Toon Buildings after enough time passes? If you're talking about how some buildings actually just seemingly randomly pop back into Toon Buildings, it's actually due to the fact that there's a limit on how many buildings there can be on a street at one time. So that means a Cog somewhere else on the street took over a Toon Building, so it had to turn another Cog building back into a Toon Building to maintain the limit. Lore-wise, you could say that perhaps the Cog stopped working in that building and eventually the liveliness inside built back up to return to its Toonie state, or that probably in a better turn of events, the shopkeeper inside managed to fend the Cogs off themselves and take back over the shop. Do you ever think there will be a chairman boss battle? It's one of the most talked about things in all of Toontown, and I think, God forbid, if before any last server dies, I think you'll find that there finally is a chairman boss battle at some point. Do we know what Bumpy did to be on trial? In my headcanon, Bumpy is a part of the Toon Resistance and was doing some reconnaissance work investigating inside Lobet HQ and was captured and tried on the grounds of trespassing. Now, there wasn't actually any mentioned or listed reason why he was on trial otherwise in any capacity from what I've seen, but in my mind, that's how it happened. I know I've asked this before, but why do weaker gags deal more damage as their tracks level up? I think gags work that way in the sense that you train to get more efficient with them. So for example, when you start out for the very first time, you have to learn how to most efficiently use the cupcake you have. Eventually, you get as efficient as possible and reach the maximum effectiveness with the gag. Think like playing a game, or picking up a sport, or even like driving. You have to spend a good time with it, picking up the basics as you go along to become as good as you can with it. Eventually, you can do so with your gags. Do cogs feel empathy or any type of feelings for other cogs? Well, at the root level, they're all robots, so they only feel as far as they're programmed. That being said, I do think cogs have a pride of partnership amongst each other. Think about how cogs hop into street battles or take the elevators to come to help other cogs in the fight against toons. If they had no empathy at all, they wouldn't attempt that help, I would imagine. When you get a new gag, how do you get it? For example, once you get the birthday cake, how do you immediately get it? Does someone give it to you? I would imagine the Toon Council maybe limits you to what gags you can use based on the experience you've had with the track. So maybe they allow you to carry one around for when you reach the experience needed, thus explaining the inevitably one you get of the next gag as soon as you unlock it. When the CFO is defeated or a little before, he says he has a train to catch, so why don't we just question him on where he's going, things about that nature, and why don't we stop him before the train runs him over? I think the idea of questioning a big boss like the CFO is easier said than done. There's no necessarily easy way of retaining them from what we've seen, and there's no guarantee that they'd answer any questions we'd throw at them regardless. It's the right line of thought, but I don't know how feasible it would actually be for toons. What is a possible alternative to the promotion theory? I personally believe we are fighting the same 4 cog bosses since the start. I think a possible alternative starts with the chairman. Perhaps think that he is the one in charge of cog development, and just continually builds each individual type of cog, including the bosses if they get destroyed or are in misrepair. Thus being no promotion, just merely a continual line of fleet of cogs just always continually trying to invade Toontown. What type of playground do you think the Burg was before the air conditioner situation? How come in 2003 Old Cog HQ was just going to have a bunch of factories containing each type of part, and where would it have fit in gameplay wise? 1. I think the Burg was most likely a desert type area before the air conditioner situation. And 2 and 3, Cog HQ was originally conceptualized to more or less be the end game of Toontown. So all the cogs would have had their own areas, with Cellbots having the foot or leg factories and things of that nature, all leading up to the final chairman boss of the entire game, which of course was eventually scrapped. Have you ever wondered the history behind Toontown, where these seemingly half-human, half-animal species came from, where these playgrounds came from, where any of it started? It all comes from the old Disney black and white cartoons, and all throughout the Mickey cartoons through the decades to this very day, as well as Roger Rabbit. It's all from our imaginations, it's all pen on paper, it's just how the Tooniverse is. Much like us, it's just how things happened. And I couldn't even imagine creating a lore about Toon evolution or where the Tooniverse came from. How do pet shops get all their doodles, and what do they do with them if no one buys them? Lore-wise, they have all come from Doodlevania, with a huge surplus of doodles all over the place. The pet shops sell them to the toons to adopt and take care of. If nobody buys them, then I'm sure the pet shops take care of them until somebody does buy them. Alright, and with that, that wraps up this session of Toontown Mysteries questions. Thank you all for your wonderful and insightful questions. Make sure if you have any thoughts or ideas to leave them in the comments, and if yours wasn't answered, don't be afraid to re-comment it. You might even see old questions pop up on newer videos as I continue to work through all of the great submissions I have. So, with that said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time in my next video.